Good evening and welcome to Eagle Eye Football. Obviously, I'm Rich, but this is more than just Crystal Palace. It's about a topic that, in all fairness, for me personally, I want to learn more about. Having two daughters myself, I want them to be able to learn more about this as well, and also to give it its space because I don't think it gets treated with the respect that it deserves. Got a lovely co-host. This obviously will be put on her platform too. So, Maisie, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Rich, how are you?
Yeah, doing well, everyone. I'm looking forward to this one. And our guest, Meg, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, doing very well, doing very well. To start off with, Meg, so that our viewers know a bit more about you. Tell us a little bit about your playing career and what you do as well.
Right, okay, so I'm Meg, I'm 29. I've played football. I didn't start till I was 11, so I was a bit of a late bloomer. But from 11, I sort of just started playing for my school team, realised I was pretty good. I got taken to play for Plymouth Argyle straight away in their sort of talent centre as it was then. From there, I sort of played like a bit more local football to the southwest. And then when I was 16, I moved sort of back down to my roots in London, well, Surrey area, and I was with Chelsea Academy down there for a bit. After that, I moved back to the southwest, and I played for Exeter, and I was there again for a couple of seasons until I fell pregnant, I had my child, moved up north to Midlands, and I now this is my third season with Port Vale up here. So I've sort of played in a few recognised clubs across the years, as well as a few sort of smaller ones. Again, like I said, like local to those areas. And I'm a PE teacher in a high school in Stoke-on-Trent. So that's me.
Brilliant. How about you, Maisie? Playing career or just a fan?
Just a fan of football. I've been a fan of football ever since I was quite very little. Roughly around 6 or 7, I started enjoying the game. I remember seeing it a lot on the TV, and then it took my interest quite a lot, thinking, wow, this looks really good. And I just wanted to start watching it that a little bit more because I seen it was like the area of Manchester United when we had like Ruud van Nistelrooy, and it really excited me the kind of player he was and the way like everybody was shouting for Ruud on the TV, and because he was one of them standout players at Manchester United then too, so he really took me like my eyes to it. And ever since then, I've just grew more and more love to Manchester United. I watched the men's game for quite a few years, but it's only been the past couple of years or so I've actually took the interest in the Manchester United women's game because they only really set up in 2018 themselves. So it was the season after when they won the championship is when I started watching more of the women's football as well, and I absolutely love the women's game too.
Oh, awesome. Let me just address some of the comments. Evening now. Yeah, I had a very good Christmas. Hope you did too. And you and Maisie and Meg, hope you had a lovely Christmas.
We did, thanks.
Good job. Jordan, you can see Jordan at 8 o'clock with me for our next show. So, big up, Jordan. Good evening, Maisie and Megs. Big up. And welcome, Jay. Let's get right into it because there's actually quite a lot to talk about. Let's start off with actually the aspect of that lack of funding, coverage, and exposure. Meg, you wanna take forward in that?
I mean, I can sort of do it from experience of you know, being a woman in football over the last few years. Well, for a while now, I suppose. But bearing in mind that I've played for these recognised clubs and the local clubs, you know, a few near to Torquay, a few near to Surrey, and another one in Stoke. Regardless of who I play for, it has always been a case where I still have to pay to play. So I would still pay for like a signing on fee. I would still sometimes pay a monthly fee, and that's for me to play. And as a 29-year-old woman, my husband still says to me, "I don't understand why you have to do this." And when I say, "Oh, you know, it's just one of them things. And he's like, you know, we don't get that in the men's game. He's never had to do it right from his grassroots days up to, you know, the age he is at now. And that's to cover things like training, your officials on a weekend, kit, insurance. And if I don't find a sponsor for myself, you know, I have to still pay to play, and that I think is a massive difference. And it's the big show tell that women's football across the board is not at the same level as men's. That, you know, Vale, for example, they, you know, say they get funding from the FA just for having a women's team. I mean, I don't know the figure, but it's like, what is that for? What is that going towards? If we're still having to pay this sort of stuff. I mean, Vale are amazing in what they do, and their chairwoman, Carol, she recently got an OBE for what she does in the women's game and in the community, and she's absolutely fantastic, and she makes as much effort as she can, and you know, the steps that she takes to sort of eradicate this, I already know for next season that's gone, because I sort of kicked up that little bit of a fuss about the difference between the men and the women's game and how we're sort of treated. And I sort of know that, well, there's seven tiers in women's football. Vale sits 6, so we're sort of just below, or sort of just above the bottom tier, because Vale ladies have only been going, I don't know, 4 or 5 seasons. But tiers 1 to 5 are the only teams that can apply for grants to help their women's team.
Wow.
So tier 6 and 7 aren't able to apply to the Football Foundation. Whereas I would say they're the teams that possibly need it most, the ones that don't have the facilities, don't have their own training grounds, don't have women's toilets or women's changing rooms. They're the ones I think that need that little bit more help. So, yeah.
Just before I come to you, Maisie, on this same aspect, do you think that it helps that you've got a woman owner or woman chairman for your club?
Absolutely, yeah. Carol, I know it was Christmas last week, and I messaged her on Monday, whatever the date was then, 21st, I'm going to throw out, and said, you know, Carol, I need to speak to you about something. I was in the club by Tuesday. And I said, I need to speak to you about something within the women's game that's going to help promote the women's game, help going to market the women's game. I need to speak to you. Tuesday 11 a.m. on Tuesday I was in. And I think
awesome.
She's so passionate. I mean, obviously Maisie's not too far away from Stoke and Vale, so I'm sure it comes up on your socials all about Carol. But she's unbelievable. I haven't got a bad word to say about her.
No, it's amazing to hear that there is someone out there, and I'm not saying there's not many, there's more, but like for you personally, maybe there's someone out there that's willing to make that change. Maisie, on that same aspect, because I did, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I heard that the United Women's, like, they didn't really have like a change of facilities or toilets or things along those lines. Like, what's your experience?
Yeah, there was rumours going about that the reason why Casey Stoney, our first manager of Manchester United Women, did resign due to the facilities of the women's team. We share the same stadium as the under 23s or the under youth teams. They play in the exact same stadium as the women's, so they've got to accommodate around both the games of the unders and the women's when they do need to be played. What Casey Stoney was quite unhappy with was the fact there wasn't no training facility, there wasn't no facilities, so the nearest toilet was 10 minutes away, and there was no showers there, and they didn't eat at the training ground either. So, and she was promised that by the owners that it was going to happen, but it never happened in the years that she was at Manchester United, which was the 2018 season all the way up to the end of last season. So she stayed, and she come out and said that she's resigning at this point. So a new manager has taken over now. At the moment, he seems quite happy with his job, and the ladies are very happy with him as well. So we'll just have to see on how we go on in terms of him as a manager also.
That's happened to other clubs though, hasn't it? Like, I think it was Birmingham or Villa, one of the clubs down there, they had a big sort of standout and people leaving due. I can't remember. I want to say it was Birmingham. They had the same thing, and a lot of players left. The manager left because I know one of the coaches from Villa has just gone across to Birmingham because there was that gap there because of the same reasoning.
Yeah. There has been a lot of different managers who are resigning recently, because I know Arsenal recently had a new manager, so has Everton recently had a new manager as well. Aston Villa has also had a recent change of manager. Quite a few different teams have had different changes of managers over even the past couple of months or so, to be honest.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm speechless. Big up, Dave. I was on this show last week. Yeah, last week. Man United fan as well, by the way, from the States. So big up to you and shout out Premier League Primetime. Ferbs, good to see you, my bro. Hope you're good. Welcome, Steffi, as well. Nate says here, even though the women's game has come on leaps and bounds, we must remember that there is still a long way to go before the investment is as close to equal as possible, if not equally entirely. Yeah, by the sounds of it, it's a very, very long way to go. It seems like Stacey was very shocked about the toilet situation and having to 10. That's mad. Really delighted the women's game is getting talked about more often now, and it's growing, and it's making progress both in England and in Scotland. I take my hats off to the women's game, 100%. And I guess some conversation is better than no conversation, you know. And I'm honestly honored to be able to even have the space to do it today, to be honest. Edna reckons it doesn't look like they're doing anything though. You know?
I think there's a little bit of a misconception there, because there's definitely things going on behind the closed doors, but like we've said earlier on, the publicity of it and the marketing and the promotion isn't the same. But I think the FA and FIFA and UEFA and the Premier League and whoever else, they need to almost shove it down people's throats, because if nothing changes, nothing will ever change. So it will continue to be the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go on to the whole aspect of exposure, because before we went live, Megan informed me of the fact that she's watching a game and then realized there's a women's game straight after. And but I'll let you explain that, because it was just like, what?
Yeah, so like it was like a Sunday night, and I had a game on, and it must have been, I don't know, like a 7 o'clock kickoff or whatever it was. I was watching the match, and game ended, and I've gone off to do something the house, and I've come back to my lounge to sort of sit back down and probably find a rubbish film, and there's a women's game on, and it was like Arsenal Leicester or something. But as a woman footballer and someone who is, I watch, you know, it could be West Brom, like the dullest team ever, I will watch it. And I didn't know this game was going to be on. I had no idea that Arsenal Leicester was following this game. I had no idea that Arsenal Leicester would be following this game. I'm being serious. Sorry. Yeah, I had no idea that it was on. It not been advertised. Even sort of at halftime of the game I'd been watching, it didn't say, you know, like if you're watching, I don't know who it could be at halftime, the commentators, the pundits will always say, you know, when we look at Brighton Brentford later on, or, you know, watch that after the game. There was none of that. There was none of the exposure, none of the coverage, none of the promotion, none of the marketing.
Crazy. So Edna just clarified, she was talking about the United situation. And I mean, has there been much change with United, Maisie?
In terms of like the exposure in itself, if I look at this time last year to now, I feel like the exposure has definitely changed, because if you look at like Manchester United women's games, the only way we could catch them was on MUTV the following day or the day after, or if you wanted to watch it live, BBC never used to show it on BBC One or BBC Two. You'd literally have to press onto the red button to get the game up. Whereas it was Sky. They put in an investment in for the women's game. So I think they should definitely play more than one game a week, because they play it on a Sunday evening, like a 6:45 kickoff. The BBC only show the early kickoffs, and that's when United tends to be on. So I always catch it now. They put it on BBC Two now, which is a great thing to see, because you can just watch it whenever you want. But I definitely do believe there should be a little bit more. I was thinking, like, even to myself, it could be a good idea if Sky has invested into the women's game to maybe put our own separate channel just for the women's football, so they can show, like how you got Sky Sports Premier League, so you can watch a game, then you can watch a second game straight afterwards if another game was on by Sky. You could do the exact same with the women's game, so you could say BBC for the early kickoff, and then afterwards, when it's the 2 o'clock, 2:30 kickoff, whatever, you can go over to Sky. Then it's a 6:45 kickoff. It would be a good idea to have something like that, I think.
I kind of agree, and I kind of don't. I think I don't agree. Yes, I agree for the exposure and the coverage, and it would be readily available. But I think I don't agree, because it would still show the disparity between men and women's, and it would still show that it's a separate sport when it's not. Like, I don't think that would be the answer, because it would be a case of it's still, I don't know, Port Vale men are playing on the men's side and Port Vale women are playing on the women's side. It's not a case of there's football on. And I think that there is still the issue with having Man United women, because they're not called Man United men, or they're not called, you do know what I mean? Like, there's still that separation. You don't have it in golf. You don't necessarily have it in tennis. You watch tennis. You're not going to say, I'm going to watch women's tennis. I'm not going to watch a women's golf or the women's cricket. That for me, I think, if that's still there, it won't change.
Wow. You sure this is only going to be for an hour? This could be so much. We might have to do a part 2 to this, Maze. Big up, Nate. Broadcast companies only care for high-profile women's fixtures, i.e., Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal. Now, okay, at the end of the day, every broadcasting company on the planet is all down to money.
But there's enough money in the sport to cover the women's game. Like, I think that goes over my head there, because that's not what really boils me, because there's loads of money in football, and it's somebody's choice somewhere where they invest it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of publicity a lot more publicity in the men's game. I mean, just take the European Super League for one. That's a lot of money that they wanted to pump into creating a new league, which could have been used for the women's game. As an example, so yeah, I do agree on the fact that there's definitely money out there. Man, competitions, from what I know of, and this is all that I've ever been exposed to, is the FA Cup final on BBC in the middle of May and such. I know obviously now there's a few more games now. I know BT Sport went for a period where they tried to show a few games, and I know Sky are trying they're not trying hard enough, but I mean, they were showing a few games here or there. Let's talk about the competitions. Are there enough competitions for the women to play in as well?
I mean, I would say so. I mean, if you're talking, it's no real different from the men's game. You've got your normal leagues, so your YSL as it is for the women's game, and then the women's championship. You've got your FA Cup, and then your National League, which is sort of the bit I'm in. But for me as well, that I also have like the county cups, and there will be those everywhere across the board, and you have your league cups and things like that. But the FA Cup is sort of the only real one with any sort of exposure. Obviously, the big one this year was the FA Cup final that was only played this month, and it was played 50 years on from the day to when women's football was banned, and that was sort of a really poignant moment for women's football. But that had over 50,000 viewers or 50,000 attendees, one or the other.
Right. I mean, you've kind of answered the second part to it, because I was going to ask about the amount of games that are played. And please correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like the Champions League. You have a Champions League equivalent. It seems like that gets more exposure than the maybe the WSL. And so, please correct me if I'm wrong.
I wouldn't say it's like noticeable as such, but then you also have a higher sort of viewing, a higher number of viewers in European football, women's football, because of how sort of elite some of the teams are. But I don't think it's like a dramatic increase.
Miz, what's your takes on the competitions?
The competitions, what we have the Women's Super League, we have the Championship, we have the Champions League, we have the Continental Cup, we have the FA Cup as well. The Continental Cup is quite different because a lot of people say that is the Carabao Cup version, but I wouldn't say it was, because it's like group stages, and then the best team, then the group gets go into the quarterfinals. So it's a bit more different compared to other cups what I've seen before. If you get a draw, you get 2 points, and it goes to penalties. If you win the penalties, you get the 2 points. Otherwise, the person gets the 1 point if you lose the penalty. So it's completely different, and I think it's a lot more fun in that kind of respect. In terms of the Super League, it is getting a little bit more coverage for me than it was this time last year. The Champions League, I don't see the coverage unless it gets to the knockout stages, into the semi-finals, the quarterfinals. That's when I see it advertised on, shown on BT. Because before that, you literally have to find a stream somewhere on YouTube to actually see the game itself.
Right.
But until then, you don't see any of the group stages games at all. You just see the knockouts and BT. The Conti Cup, we actually see that. So there's this website called the FA Player. So if that's not getting shown on the TV, it gets shown on the FA Playoff. So for the Super League games and also the Conti Cup games as well, you get to watch it through there. And MUTV has been the occasion where they're showing it live as well, the Conti Cup. The FA Cup, that has definitely had the most coverage with the final, Arsenal versus Chelsea. That was at Wembley as well, and it did come out with a really big atmosphere there for me as well. I think it was probably one of the best atmospheres I have seen in quite a while also, because another atmosphere what I did see quite a lot, it was in the Women's World Cup. I think you're seeing a big atmosphere there, and I think that's when that's what, for me, where people started to watch a little bit more of the football in the women's aspect, was the World Cup, where I think we got into the semi-finals, so we did extremely well as well. So I think that's when the coverage really started to get shown, and then it just started to grow that tiny bit more from that point. But there is still definitely some coverage what does need to be shown. I think what could be useful as well is a Europa League, because there is a Europa League in the men's football, and then it's top 3 for to get into the Champions League. It's not top 4, it's top 3, and then apart, if you don't have that, you've got literally, you play the rest of the cups and that's it. And I think it's good to have that little bit more European experience as well, more European games, because we all know what a European football is like. The atmosphere on a cold Sunday, a cold Tuesday night, and then you're just getting so excited thinking, yes, we're in the knockout stages. And I think it's nice to have a little bit more atmosphere, and I think the Europa League, I think, would actually work pretty well for me as well.
Awesome. I mean, I guess any additional competition will be beneficial, and that will come and then bring about more exposure. But it's obviously got to come from the top first and foremost. You know, and like I said, it's so difficult for me to actually find anything for a 4-year-old to watch, or even at a reasonable time. It's like,
Well,
so go on.
the WSL as well. I think it's important to note, talking about games and competitions and exposure and stuff. There's only 12 teams in the Women's Super League. So
Yes.
in the top sort of tier of English football, there's only 12 teams. There's not the 20 that you get in the men's. And I think, like, going back to my earlier point about tier 1 to 5 of football, if everyone scrolls up a little bit, there's room for those teams that are sort of top end tier 6 to be able to go to into tier 5 and then start to looking and pushing for some of those grants and that funding.
Understand. Just a quick question before we hit the comments. So Maisie obviously mentioned that Manchester United women play in the same stadium as the under 23s. Do the Port Vale women play, like, do they play in like the stadium? Where do they play matches?
No. So we have played at Vale Park, but it's only ever like a pre-season, or I don't want to use the word novelty, but it's never a game that sort of means anything really. We have a Vale, again, I go back to Carol being who she is and what she's like. She's actually recently bought what was a council-owned area that Sunday morning football was being played on by local Sunday teams. She's bought this area, and it's for the women and the girls, and it's going to be made into the women and girls sort of football centre for Port Vale, and there will be funding going into that to make it better facilities, because like Maisie said about the Man United women, although there is already the accessibility for the toilets and stuff there, it's not what you would expect a club like Port Vale to have, regardless of where women are, the women's team are in the tier of things. And this is something I said to Carol in the meeting we had last week. Regardless of whether we are an academy, a women's team, the development centre, the men's team, we're all wearing the same badge, and the same expectations, the same professionalism should go from top to bottom.
Okay. Question here in the comments, and actually, if those who are watching, if you have got any questions, chuck them in. Any questions are good questions, to be honest. Are there any women equivalent to Messi and Ronaldo, for example, to try and push them out, give the women game more exposure?
There is some real good players in football. There's a couple of Barcelona players. One of them won Ballon d'Or as well. She's a Barcelona midfielder, and it's absolutely crazy. The Barcelona team is absolutely unreal. They've already scored over 100 goals. They're like an absolute unit of a team. How brilliant they are, how organised they are as well. For me, I think they're absolutely brilliant. In terms of the Super League in itself, a player who really stands out for me is Sam Kerr. I think she is an absolute brilliant player. And she, as much as I look at Manchester United, you think I need, like, these are the players I love. You look at like other teams and you think these are such good players. Sam Kerr for me, Frank Kirby another, and for me they've got one of the best partnerships I have seen as well in the Super League. Their partnership is unreal. I always compare it to like Dwight Yorke and Andy Cole from the 90s at Manchester United, how well they work together. In terms of Manchester City, they have Lauren Hemp, they have Ellen White, who I think is absolutely unreal players. The speed on Lauren Hemp, she can get past any player. When she is a fully fit and she is playing her best game, she could get past any defender, and she can pass it to Ellen White, or she can score the goal herself. She's so quick. At Manchester United, my personal favourite player, Ella Toone. Ella Toone came such a young age at Manchester United. She played at Manchester City's youth because Manchester United didn't have the women's game. But then when we did, we brought her over, and she was more like a prospect at the game. So she was more of a squad player. And she's worked herself up to be a starting 11 player, then a starting player at the England team as well. And she's actually one of the top goal scorers now at Manchester United this season. She's averaging out near enough a goal and assist every single game. That's how well she's doing at this moment in time.
Well, For you,
Yeah,
Meg?
I can sort of mirror and yeah, the same sort of mirror exactly what Maisie said about those players, Sam Kerr and Fran Kirby. And I'm glad you said about their partnership, because if you didn't, I was going to. Ella Toone, again, was one of the first names I thought of. Lucy Bronze,
Yes.
another player that is unbelievable. She's a defender, and she's unreal. There's Beth Mead at Arsenal. She's stand out for me. Alessia Russo at United, a fairly sort of recent player, isn't she? Sort of coming up through the ranks.
Mm.
And then if you're looking at the sort of the younger ones, there's Tara Bourne. She was at United, but she's on loan at Sheffield United to sort of get that little bit more experience. And I think for me, it's not about the sort of standouts, Messi and Ronaldo's, and as again, like I keep saying, I'm a little bit older in football, but I think about the women that inspired me at the time, and I wouldn't have ever compared them to Messi or Ronaldo, because that's probably the problem. They're compared to those goats of the men's game, like Kelly Smith. Nobody talks about her goal ratio when she played. Faye White, unbelievable defender. God, who else now? Like Enia Luco, Alex Scott, even, you know, upcoming punditry, female, amazing. As a player, she was one of my favourites. Sue Smith played for Leeds, played for Everton, again, now works for Sky Sports. And these sorts of names are the ones that should be household in women's football.
No, wicked. Speaking of Ellen White, and I actually heard this from Newsround. Obviously, we play Newsround every day for the kids to kind of get in. And they actually, it was a game they won 20-0, I believe.
Yeah.
I think it was against Latvia. And she broke the record, became England's all-time top scorer, which was amazing. It was just amazing to see that there was the exposure. And as much as it was only for a couple of minutes on Newsround, I don't know if that was done on Sky Sports or anything else, because obviously I was at work, but it was nice for the kids in my class to see that, you know. And as I said, any exposure is good exposure. So congratulations to Ellen White for sure. We'll get a few more comments. So big up Rich, Maisie and Meg. That's big up Rush. There's not enough female representation in the boardrooms. Negotiating and ring fencing adequate funding should be standard for women's football to progress.
United are actually looking at bringing a head of sport and development for the women's side now as well. We're not too sure who we're getting yet. Rumours are suggesting Siobhan Chamberlain. And because when you want to have someone who is the head of sports and development, you want someone who's got passion for the game as well. And Siobhan Chamberlain, she absolutely loves United. She has a brilliant understanding of the game. So it is definitely developing in that way as well, because we are looking at getting different boards around, so we have more exposure for the women's game for Manchester United too.
Absolutely. I think Meg's connection's just fallen off, so I'm sure she'll be back shortly. The Her Game 2 movement is thankfully beginning to make a lot of people pay attention to what we say in the stands. 100%. Exposure and accessibility are the important things to address. World Cup 2011 is when I started to pay attention. The coverage and attention to the competition really draws attention. They need the same sort of attention to the domestic game. I agree that like the World Cup gets a lot of coverage actually, but once again, I think the domestic game needs to get even more coverage, I'd say, than the World Cup.
They've actually got the Euros as well in the summer and they're actually getting shown in England. Old Trafford is having the opening game for England versus Austria. And they're doing it all around England. So they've got it at the Etihad Stadium as well. They've got it at United's ground, Lee Sport Village. They've got it at Brentford Community Stadium, Wembley as well. So it's good to see that the Euros, what's coming up, it is getting shown at a much bigger ground where you actually are going to get that lot more coverage as well. So we'd be interested to see on how it's going to be for the Euros coming up in the summer.
No, absolutely.
Sorry, I missed that.
So we're just going through some of the comments, and Brush made a comment about the coverage for the World Cup is pretty good actually, but more attention to the domestic game will bring about more attention to everything in general, really. So Nate says saying that Palace, yeah, I think the Palace women should play at Selhurst Park too. You know, at the moment we play at Frobley Stadium at Hayes Lane and such, which they do a good job, to be honest. But I think the women should play in the same stadium as the men, personally. Now regarding
a friend of mine plays for Fulham, and she plays her games at Motspur Park, so she plays at like Fulham men's training ground. It's a good pitch there, but it's, you know, what would the difference be being playing at Craven Cottage?
No, absolutely. I mean, I know Motspur Park's got fantastic facilities, to be honest, but it's just not the same. It's not the same.
No.
And so, to answer your question now, I got a match reaction at 8, so I'll definitely be missing the first half of the game. But we are here talking about women's football. We'll try to keep it to that. Brett says we need transparency throughout football clubs. Big up CM. When I look at the way the NBA promotes the WNBA, you can clearly see that broadcasting companies and governing bodies are not doing enough to push women's game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, that was actually going to be our next topic about America, because you look at the women's game, the national team, they're really successful, and and once again, correct me if I'm wrong, it just seems as if there's more done for the women's game in America than it is here. Like, what's your thoughts on that? And anyone can take that.
For the women's game, I know that the players are having a bit more of a voice, because there is one of the players, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she is looking at like getting equal pay as well, and I think that is getting looked into at the moment.
I think that's Meg Rapinoe.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember her name off the top of my head, so thank you for that. And I think it is getting looked into at the moment with Joe Biden, so we just have to see on how that does go on. But the USA team is absolutely brilliant. Even Canada, their team is brilliant as well. I'd say them two are probably one of the best teams in the world at the moment in terms of football.
Yeah, I agree about the sort of women's football, and then pushing for the equal pay, and closing that little bit of a gap. But like I sort of alluded to earlier about the misconceptions about what's happening in the UK for the women's football, but there is a women's development program that is in place with FIFA, and that program is looking at sort of the gaps and what they need to do to fill those gaps. And they've got 8 sort of designated programs to help accelerate those gaps. And it's things about the football strategy, campaigning for women's football, women in sports leadership or football leadership. There's like coaching mentorship, as well as scholarships for coaches, and there is, like I said, those things going on behind the scenes. And I think I read there's something like 80 projects that have already been completed through the WDP. But again, like I said earlier, it's not, if people don't know about it, it's not going to happen. So as a school teacher, a secondary school teacher, when I arrived at my school only 3 years ago, there was no women's football, no girls football at all. And now 3 years on, I've got a team in every age group. So sort of you're under year 7,
Awesome.
under 12, under 13, under 14, under 15. And, a lot of those girls either want to go into officiating, playing outside of school, coaching. If they don't know about those opportunities, or schools don't know about those opportunities, and the development program, that's where.
You back, Meg?
Yeah, sorry, did you lose me again?
Just a bit, yeah. So you're saying the programs?
Yeah, I'm just saying that there needs, if people don't know about them, then they can't push the right people in the right direction. Like, if there's no communication of it, how am I supposed to send my girls there?
Sure. Super Nick said here, governing bodies are led by men without enough female representation and less tokenism. This will be like fighting a losing battle, as if women's football it's being set up to fail.
Mm-hmm. Massively agree.
Oh, and now just saying that you're back.
Yeah, sorry.
Nah, so listen, technology is our best friend and our worst enemy at the same time. So, I mean, I've been looking at mine. The Wi-Fi symbols come up. I'm thinking, don't play up now, please. Don't play up right now. The last topic, and like I said, I feel we might need to do another one of these, maybe on your channel, Maisie. It's a perception, and we're going to look at obviously referees, commentators, broadcasters, and content creators, because obviously content creators is now a space where a lot of females are heading into, and even that gets bashed. You know, it's like, oh, but your opinions are not valued, and so on and so forth. So let's just start off with perception in a whole, and then we'll bring out this subtopics as well. You said something that really sent shivers down my spine before we started, Meg, about your school.
Yeah. So again, like I said, secondary school teacher in a city, and you know, if the kids openly know that I play football, and you know, from sort of the middle of the years, like year 8, year 9, sometimes year 10, if they're pushing my buttons, they will say to me, "Football's not for women; it's for men. You need to get back in the kitchen. You need to get back to your cleaning." And they will say those sorts of things to me because they think it's going to hurt me, because they must hear it from me. Like, and we were saying before, both as teachers, you hear things that kids say and you're like, that's got to have come from home. And it's definitely a case of education and ignorance. And as long as that's there, that we'll continually have this conversation of that around the women's game. And it's not even just gender. That could be about anything that is different to ourselves. So it could be race, religion, sexuality, and gender itself. Exactly. It's learnt behavior. They've heard that. The sort of saying of get back in the kitchen, that is something that will follow women's football because it's come from somewhere.
How did you go about, like, and I know you shouldn't have to change your students' perception because it shouldn't be there in the first place, but like, how do you go about like overcoming that? Because it could be really like discouraging in a sense, you know, to even want to continue working.
Yeah, well, when it happened, I remember thinking, like, you know, when someone says something, you think, I actually don't know how to respond to that right now in this moment. And it was sort of a thing where, I think it was mid-lesson, and I sort of just said, right, we're going to have a conversation about this at the end. It wasn't a case of I went mad at him. It was sort of a case of, right, we're going to talk about this at the end. And we sort of had a sit-down conversation, and I said to him, like, why would you say that? And he's like, well, it is. Women don't play football. I'm like, but women do play football, and they play football very, very well. And I was like, you have to think about what you're saying. I said, would you have said that? Would you have made a comment if it was about a black person playing football? Would you have said that if it was about, I don't know, a gay person wanting to dance, or if it was about, or whatever it may be? And he sort of was like a bit of a tail between his legs, like, no, miss. I'm like, but that's not okay to say about women in football, women in sport, or about anybody.
Maisie, as a content creator, do you face these sort of issues yourself?
You know, I actually haven't experienced anything at all in the kind of anything in terms of setting up a YouTube channel. I set up a YouTube channel 4 months ago, and everybody who has been on the channel, been on the live chat, they've been all so lovely, all been so supportive as well. And I actually have quite a few people when I do watch-alongs for the Manchester United, and for like when I do like reactions for the women's game, they actually get so engaged about it. I even had quite a few comments saying that they want to learn more now about the women's football ever since like watching the streams of the reactions, the previews, the watch-alongs, that they actually want to start watching it themselves. And to me, that makes me feel a bit happier that I'm actually like bringing that little bit more coverage. There is a YouTube channel in particular who does do solely based on Manchester United women's side of the football, and that's All for United WFC. They literally do absolutely everything. They even travel around all parts of the country just to watch the game, to support the team.
That's
and I
awesome.
think it's absolutely incredible, and their community is absolutely amazing, because I've made friends with all of them. They're all such lovely people, and the way they're actually exposing the game itself as well, I really take my hats off to them too.
No, that's awesome. That is awesome. I mean, I'll give a shout out to Eglad View. It's a Twitter account, and it's a guy called Mike, but he goes to all the Palace women games, and I know he's done like giveaways and stuff like that. So he's doing his bit to try and obviously bring about exposure and stuff. The one thing that was a bit like, oh man, like a bit upsetting is though, he said, because I had put it out there like a tweet. I was like, is there anyone that would like to cover the women's game, Palace women, on this channel? Because obviously I cover the men's side. One, because I don't tend to get to many female games, and two, because it would be nice for women to have that space to do so. And he messaged me back. He's like, mate, it's mainly men that go to the women's game, you know. And it's just like, oh, like it really kind of was like, it kind of put me down a bit, because I feel the women, they're amazing. Crystal Palace women, they're a very good team, you know. I'm just hoping that we can get more and more girls, women, like going to watch those games. But going back to it, looking at the referee, Sean Massey, I mean, she was doing a great job before certain idiots decided to make comments. And what's annoyed me about that is that they're still working. That's the thing that's infuriated me the most. And what's your thoughts on that? Let's start with referees, then we'll go into broadcasters, because there's some excellent broadcasters at the moment.
So with the officiating side of things, I think it's been difficult because obviously it's hard. What they're saying is that it's harder for females to pass a men's fitness test. And this has come from Jo Stimpton, I think she's called, that is the sort of the referee and manager. And this is there's a statement she made. But then she goes on to say that it is more difficult for women to pass these fitness tests because they are not full-time. They're not professional. They're not given that time and that space. Sian Massey, as an example, Joanna Stimpson, she said that Sian Massey would struggle every single year to pass her fitness test. She would always be late into the season because it would take her longer to pass her fitness test. But that was because she wasn't a professional official. She had to she had to work two jobs essentially. She did her daytime job, and then she did her officiating on the side. When she was at a point where it was financially viable for her to not work full time and officiate, she then passed the fitness test with flying colours because she was given that time and space to do so.
Right.
And more recently, there was Mark Clattenburg made those comments about women officials and said that they have to choose between being pregnant or a career. He said about that. And he did go on to say about those fitness tests and about how women do struggle to do that. And he said it in a very, very, very obscure way. But then he came back round and alluded to that. But again, you talk about Rebecca Welch, I think she's called. Rebecca Welch, sorry. And she is one of the top-ranked referees but she still works the 30-hour weeks for the NHS.
Wow.
30 hours. Yeah.
Oh, bless, we might have lost. Yeah, we've lost that. It's such a shame, but look at that, 30 hours with the NHS and then officiating afterwards. It shows like that's a massive hurdle to climb, to have to work two jobs as it is. I mean, I was doing a little bit of football coaching on the side with the teaching, and I had to sack that off because that's hard. It's hard. So
Yeah.
to actually work in the NHS, which is probably one of the toughest jobs out there, and then officiate, like, all credit to her, but like,
Yeah.
she shouldn't have to do that to make ends meet, or to even just to follow her dreams, you know. Lastly, we'll start with you, Maisie, on this. Broadcasters. Now, fair play to Alex Scott, Enya Luko. Who else has been out there? Please throw out names if I've forgotten. I know Faye White's on a bit. Sue
Smith.
Smith and such. So they've been able to get onto like major platforms, you know, and obviously share their thoughts on both the men's and women's game. Do you think the perception, because of their hard work, do you think the perception is now changing over like females' attitudes to the game and such?
I think it has definitely changed. I think one who is definitely a big influence is Alex Scott. Alex Scott, I would definitely say she is seen as a role model to a lot of the young females who do want to get into football, because when you hear him say, "Oh, who's your dream footballer? Who's the footballer you look at?" They'll go, "I want to be just like Alex Scott." You always, Alex Scott. If I was asked 10 people, I'd probably hear at least several people who say Alex Scott. She's such a big name into football. Her with the broadcasting is absolutely amazing, and that is the person who I say is right now the face of the game. I think she's absolutely brilliant. In terms of the broadcasting as well, a couple of weeks ago when the game was on, because I watched it back because I went to the game itself. So when I came back after the Arsenal game, I rewatched it again, and it was actually asking about female broadcasters to come step forward in BBC to for more broadcasters, and I thought that was really good for BBC to open some more opportunities as well, so they can get some more voices out there.
Meg?
Yeah, I agree. And like you said about Alex Scott and Enya Luko, they're definitely leading the way. And people like Karen Carney. But when the the Euros were on, the men's game in the summer just gone, Emma Hayes, she received massive sort of Twitter mainly sort of applause based on how good she was and how good her punditry was, how good her commentary was. People were talking about her knowledge bombs left, right, and centre. But what I didn't understand about it, and she did deserve it, without a shadow of a doubt, she did deserve it. But what I didn't understand is why people were so shocked by it. Emma Hayes is one of the most decorated managers in women's football, and over a couple of decades. Why should you be surprised that a woman has that sort of knowledge? It's almost like she's had to work 4 or 5 times as hard as a male pundit or male commentator to get the same sort of recognition. Ian Wright said that she is one of the best commentators that he has ever worked with, and her co-commentator on a night of I think it was the first game that she commentated on, and it was Joe Spite or Spate, I don't know how to say his surname, but she dropped a knowledge bomb, and he sort of went, "You're putting me to shame here, like you're embarrassing me here," in a light-hearted way. But I couldn't get my head around why that was a shock to people. Why one of the most decorated managers in women's football, why shouldn't she have that knowledge? Why is that a big surprise to you?
Wow. I mean, like I said, these are eye openers for myself as well, because as much as I may personally not feel like I am ignorant to things, I'm going to be ignorant to things, if that makes sense, and this is why I said that I'm here to learn as well, and fair play to him for even coming out and saying, like, you're putting me to shame. But on the flip side, you could be thinking, why are you so shocked? You can see both sides to it.
Yeah.
It's just, I guess, and it comes back to this point from now, it's just about getting fresh voices out there, whether it's Sky, the Euros, the World Cup, whatever it may be, just get them out there. Whether it's the male or the female, it doesn't matter. Just get them out there and let them have their voice, because they're clearly doing a great job. Clearly doing
Yeah.
a great job. You know what? I don't want this to end. I really don't. But I would love the opportunity to do this again with you both, and even if there's any other women who play or content creators, get them on and have their say. Because particularly, I want to actually now go into the aspect of pregnancy, because I feel that is in all works of life. Actually, I feel that's one of the biggest hurdles for women. And it'll be great to talk about that a bit more, I think, as well. And not just obviously gloss over it as we've done so today, because a decision has to be made, unfortunately. Do you go for the career? Or do you go for children? But why can't you do both? I would love to do this again with you both and with others as well. We'll just finish off with this last comment here. I'd like to see some more mix in the matching too, so that female pundits are not limited to the women's game and vice versa. No, absolutely. That would be great, to be honest. Maisie, Meg, thank you so much. I have learned so much, and thank you for everyone in the comments and your comments, your questions. It kind of brings about discussion, and I think this is what's needed. We'll start with Meg. Where can people find you if they are to find you anywhere?
So on Twitter mainly is what I use for my footballing side of things. I'm quite active on there, so that's at Baldwin Meg, and or on Instagram at MeganLucy22. But I also just want to add on the end, I know we spoke a little bit before about this, and I was hoping I'm not jumping on your toes here, Rich.
No, go.
If you do want to find out anything more about women's football, then I would openly, actively encourage you to support local women's teams. They always need the help, they always need support, they always need the funding, they almost always need the volunteers. So if you think you can do that good job, and I'm sure it's not so I'm preaching to the choir here, if you think you can do a better job and you get behind your keyboard and tell people so, put that into action. Because if I'm Maisie, like as a content creator, I'm sure, and I hate to say it, but I'm sure at some point you will get that negativity, but that's because people can hide behind those keyboards. So if you are one of those people and you think you can do it better, go and support your local women's team and volunteer.
Awesome. Maisie? And now, by the way, that's amazing to hear, by the way. So Mother in Scotland have now got a women's team. And thank you for the encouraging messages. I've seen that in the comments as well. Thank you. Maisie?
You can find me on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Devils United, or on Manchester United football. And you can find me also on my Twitter. My Twitter is at @2_MUSCMaze.
Awesome. And yeah, Maisie does amazing content as well. And hopefully, if I'm not stuck in any meetings, next week, Wednesday, I'll be on our show too. So looking forward to that. Meg, Maisie, an absolute pleasure. Guys in the chat, thank you so much. And you know what? Share this around with everyone. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure others will learn too, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again soon.
Thanks for having me on, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
No problem. No worries.